Okay, so I hope you all can see my screen. Okay. Neelab has given a detailed explanation of how you can install Zoom app and how you can view the meetings. Thank you, Neelab, for that. Okay, let's start with the session. So yesterday, we had completed and understood what business analytics is, what are the applications, what is the relevance, what are the stages of business analytics, where we had covered up what is descriptive analytics, what is diagnostic, what is predictive, prescriptive, and cognitive. So does anyone have any problem so far? Any doubts in yesterday's session which you did not understand? Or we need to just, or can we just go ahead with the next topic? So Mr. Ranjit, the recording, session recording will be available in your student dashboard. You can just go through it. Just to brief you a little bit. No, it's okay. You can attend the session today. That's not a problem. We are just discussing about the basics of analytics, how, what is the importance and what are the applications of it. So just to brief you, we have spoken about different ways in which people define analytics, what all it includes, what are the different applications in terms of in which all fields it can be applied. So analytics is a knowledge that you require and you can apply it in any domain. So yes, sure, Manisha. So after understanding the importance of analytics, we had discussed a part of stages of analytics. So Manisha wants me to explain it in brief. So basically, descriptive analytics is a part where we or data can answer us the questions of what happened in the data. Okay. So analytics is never possible without having data with us. We know data is available from various sources. We need to analyze the data. We also spoke about difference between structured and unstructured data yesterday. We need to transform unstructured data to a structured data. And we then need to work or analyze a structured data to get insights from it. Now, the insights that we get from applying descriptive analytics to a data will answer questions, what happened? So basically, whenever we are using a data, it's always going to be a historical data, which we are going to study. And then understanding the insights from it, we are going to apply it in future. So descriptive analytics will help us understand some important factors, some important numbers, excuse me, some important numbers and factors in the data. So it gives me a very general statistics as what was the average age of the participants in the survey, how many number of products being sold, which is the most selling product, etc. So depending on the different domain, you can get different answers which will explain you the data. Next is diagnostic. So this part will explain us why something happened. So basically, if you know that, if you find out that there was some XYZ product which you expected, or it was a new product that you had launched and you expected it to perform much better. But then After you analyze the results after a few months about its performance, you see that it has not done that well as per your expectations. Now, why did something happen? Why were the sales very low for this new launched product? Was there something in competition? Was the strategy that you did for marketing was not right? The audience did you, whichever you targeted was not right. So these questions, diagnostic, as the word diagnose tells you, what exactly, why exactly something happened. The next stage is predictive analytics, where whatever results we get from descriptive and diagnostic, which helps us to understand what happened, why something happened, which gives you a general idea of what should be done next. So, predictive analytics is going to understand and study the historical data, the past data, and it is going to help you create an algorithm or a model which you can apply to create future observations or readings. So, you will know what is going to happen in the next few months or the next few years with a particular thing. So, as the word says, predictive, we are trying to predict here using the information that we have. The next is prescriptive analytics. Now, this is one step ahead of predictive. Very less people use prescriptive analytics. People, I mean to say, very less companies or institutions use prescriptive analytics. This more of goes into artificial intelligence side, where the algorithm or the machine is helping us to know what is going to happen. It is also helping us to decide what should we do if X happens, if Y happens, if Z happens, etc. So the example which I had mentioned yesterday, if we are discussing about the stock prices, looking at the past information, I can know how my stock is going to behave in the next 6 months. It's going to go low, it's going to go high. So, depending on this, where I'm predicting it's going to go low or high, suppose I predict it goes high, then my prescriptive analytics, an additional thing, will help me to decide, or it will give me a decision that you should be retaining the stock because the prices are going to go high. So here there is no human intervention also to decide with what should we do. The machine is helping us to decide what action should be taken after you know what are the future results going to be. So that is prescriptive analytics. And cognitive analytics is again more of a part of artificial intelligence. It is also called as intelligent analytics, where it is the technology is also supporting us, the analytics, to understand or make decisions collectively or looking at the whole picture together. So the example which I told yesterday was rather than just looking or picking up some words in the text, we would rather look at the whole context and know that what is the reader or what is the user, product user trying to tell us about whatever he purchased. So if the product user is telling us the product is awesome, but the service was not good. So if I just want to pick up the positive words from here, it will obviously give me a good feedback. But if I collectively look at the whole picture, it tells me that yes, the product user is telling me the product is good, but the service is not that good. Then I should be focusing on my service area to improve it much better. So it basically looks at the holistic picture and analyzes and tells us the or gives us the insights about it. So these are the stages of business analytics. I hope it's clear. Manisha, anything unanswered or you have understood things? Okay. So these slides, descriptive analytics, it just tells, it's just briefing you again whatever I have told you about it. So it's a method of finding the historical trends and etc. Diagnostic analytics is involves a lot of reporting. Basically, it tries to give the details of the problems from all the angles. Predictive tells what is likely to happen. And prescriptive, it prescribes recommendations after knowing what is going to be happening. And cognitive is artificial or machine learning layer, as I told you. So it is based on reasoning and logic. Okay. So these topics will give you very detailed or nice definitions for whatever I try to explain in simple language. So you maybe you just want to go through it later on. Now, moving from the analytics step, understanding the different stages of analytics, where we already mentioned that data plays a very, very important role. Data is the crux of analytics and nothing can happen without it. Now, what are the different sources of data? Structured data, semi-structured data, unstructured data. By now, I'm sure everyone must have got some idea because we have been discussing this from yesterday. Structured data are the spreadsheets, the SQL tables where we have proper rows and columns where we know what a particular observation stands for, what value it is taking. Semi-structured data are the XML files or the JSON files, or in fact, even the emails, because the email looks like an unstructured data because you write a lot of text in it, but it has a lot of bifurcation in it. You know who wrote the email, you know to whom it was written, you know the date and time when it was written, you know the subject of the email, and then comes the whole context. So the data is actually somewhere in a semi-structured format where you can identify or you can make it to a structured format without much of a process that you would need to do. But the unstructured data, like the Twitter messages, the tweets that you give, the Facebook chats, the books or the articles, the image, audio, video, these are all unstructured data where you need to pick up the information from these different sources, and then you need to convert it to a structured data to finally analyze it. Okay, so in terms of the images and everything, the pixel readings are read, and that is recorded to convert it into a structured data. So it involves very high end technology to uh, convert an unstructured data to a structured data, especially when there are things like image, audio, or video, which you want to convert it into a proper formatted data. So these are various sources of data. And using the data, we create a model. Okay. So I'm not sure if everyone has heard about this word model. Model in terms of analytics, where you try or you have an algorithm in place which gives you some results. And how does that, or how is that formula or algorithm getting prepared? It is a complete mix of maths formulas, stats formulas, and human judgment. Okay, so you will actually understand this thing when we do regression analysis, uh, or we start building any algorithm. Suppose, let me give you an example. Suppose we want to predict house prices. Okay. Now, what are the factors that you think would be affecting house prices? Yes, guys. Please, in the chat box, everyone. So my question is, uh, house prices depend on what all factors? Yes. So most of you have given me different parameters where we think house prices are depending on. Yes. So it depends on the location, where the land is. It depends on the area of the house. It also depends. So location will include if there are nearby schools, if there are nearby hospitals, or there are nearby stores. It will include on the area, which can also be have. So if the area is big, but if it's just one bedroom or bedroom, the value might not be that much. Number of bedrooms, maybe if there's a balcony in the house, at which floor the house is. So all these things impact the house prices. Yes, labor cost, raw material, all those things are also equally important, because uh, but that's a bottom line of the uh, what do you say, the base where the house prices start on going up. Now, when I want to create a model to predict the house prices, what will I ideally do? I will first select a past data from a city. So suppose I want to predict the house prices in Bangalore. What I'll be doing is, the houses which have been already sold off, I will be looking at those data points. I will be looking at different parameters which I think are important. I'll be applying different formulas, stats formulas and maths formulas, to come up with a equation which will help me to predict the house prices. Now, when I say that I'm going to apply maths or stats formula, it will include some, obviously, analytics has the base of maths and stats. So the example that I'm telling you is a regression analysis problem, where I would find out that maybe only the location, the number of bedrooms, and square feet area are only the parameters on which the house prices are variable, or a lot of variability in the house prices is seen because of these factors. Now, this is the model that you are building. You had collected so many other parameters, but what did you choose? You chose only these three. Now, you being a domain expertise, you being into this industry, you would think that if the square feet of the house is there in the data, number of bedrooms is not required. So this is a human judgment which is coming up with the domain knowledge of that particular area. So you might want to just predict your house prices depending on the area of the house and the locality of the house. You might not want to take up the number of bedrooms also. So it is a complete picture where you apply some mathematics and statistics along with the domain knowledge, which we call here as human judgment, and then we build a model. Now, just knowing these words or with example, if it's not clear, do not worry. When we start working actually with predictive modeling, you will understand why we are talking about this human judgment and what are these maths and stats formulas that help us build the model. So, for model building, we require a few steps. What are the different steps which we require for model building? We need to first define the business problem. Okay, now what was the business problem over here? The example that we talked, the problem was to predict the house prices. Okay, so first we need to define what we exactly want. Then we need to structure the business problem in such a way so that we will know what are the different parameters that we will need to study for solving that business problem. Then the parameters, we are going to translate it to the math and statistics problem. We're going to identify some statistical trend where we do some predictive, to start with descriptive, diagnostic, and predictive analytics. After performing these things, we get a solution, we interpret those results and make a decision. So the problem at hand, predicting the house prices. First, we defined the problem. We structured the business problem. So that means the data that we collected, we got it in a proper structured format, maybe in a spreadsheet or an Excel sheet. Then we are feature construction. Feature construction means creating the variables in the data to understand or to create simple variables in the data which will explain your response variable, that is prediction of house prices. Then we are doing the descriptive analytics where we want to find out, okay, now some people have filled your survey forms, how much they bought the house for, what was the square feet area, number of bedrooms, location, is there a school nearby, is there a hospital nearby, etc. Now some people might miss out on the information and they do not write some information. We see a lot of survey forms where some of the informations are missing. Now, how to manage that missing information? That we know from identifying the statistical analysis, identifying the trends in the data to take care of those missing values so that our final analysis doesn't get hampered. So after doing all of this stuff, which whole thing is called as a data preparation. Data preparation plays almost 70 to 80% role into analytics. If you have the right data with you, you can just apply the algorithm and you can interpret the results. Then after we get the solutions, after applying a algorithm, we get a final model. We interpret those results and then we can take a decision. So, so for any new locality coming up, or the square feet area that you have, you know a few parameters like what is the locality, what is the square feet of the house being built. You can predict the house price automatically using the model that you have with you ready. So this is the whole process that goes into model building and interpreting the results of what model gives you and taking decisions based on it. Any doubts so far? I'll wait for a minute. Uh, if you do not understand these things at this point, no problem, because when we actually have the data with us, it becomes more easier to relate these things. So, okay, Ranjit is asking me, how do we deal with missing data? Ranjit, this is a very important question, but I think it's a little bit too early. There are various statistical methods that we can use to deal with the missing data. Okay, so we'll all be learning that in detail of what are the different methods. Yes, yes, there are methods that help us deal with the data. So we'll be learning all of that in detail. So as we go ahead with the course, we first have the data preparation steps also that we are going to take. In that, we are going to deal with how to deal with missing values or how to deal with some extreme or the outliers in the data. So we'll be doing that. Anyone else? Any questions so far? Is there something which I need to repeat? Hello, can you all hear me? Okay. So now we will be discussing about what is data science. So data science is a combination of technology knowledge, mathematical and statistical knowledge, and domain expertise. Okay. So when you have domain expertise and when you have good computer science knowledge, that's technology, it's a field called software engineering. When you have mathematical and statistical knowledge and you have domain expertise, it's a subfield called as research. And computer science and mathematics and statistics, the knowledge of both leads you to becoming a machine learning expert. Okay. And when all of this comes together, you are the unicorn of data science. That means you can call yourself a data scientist. Now, it is not very quick that you can become a data scientist, to be very frank. It requires a lot of knowledge, understanding. It requires a lot of experience in that field because you need to be good with the different technologies. Now, we have discussed a few problems where we need to convert the unstructured data to a structured data. You need to know what exact technology is required to do that, what technology, and it does not mean, it also means the hardware and the software technology which is required to do all those things. You need to know algorithms, important machine learning algorithms that you need to apply, and it also depends on your domain expertise. So if you are into medical field, if you're into pharmaceutical field, or if you are into IT industry, you need to have a good knowledge of that particular field so that whatever technology you apply, whatever algorithms you apply, and the results that you get, you should be able to interpret them using the domain knowledge, and the domain knowledge will help you to give you proper results, or it will help you to interpret proper results in a way where you can actually get actionable insights. Okay. Sometimes models give you mathematically or statistically right answers, but they are not necessarily going to be right as per your business requirement. So it has to be a blend of everything all together. So data science is, to sum up or to define, it is an interdisciplinary blend of data, inference, algorithm development, and technology so that we can solve complex analytical problems. Now, what are the domain expertise that you require in to be in a data science profession? Analytical and problem solving is definitely the one. Effective communication. Now, this is a very, very important thing because whatever results you get, you being an analytics professional, you being a data scientist, you know what algorithms you have applied, you know what mathematics and statistics you have applied in the data to get a particular set of results. But maybe your subordinates are not expertise in that area. When you need to explain these business problems to your managers or your subordinates, you should be able to explain them or effectively communicate them in such a way that they understand the interpretations out of it. You can take care of the mathematical and statistical part, but the interpretation or the business actual output that you get from these interpretations is something that you should be able to explain them. And this actually requires industry and domain knowledge which you have. So it is a very important thing for a data scientist so that you can detail your techniques and discoveries to technical as well as non-technical audience in whichever language they understand. And then you can be called as a proper data scientist. Intellectual curiosity, industry knowledge is where we talk about domain knowledge. Mathematical and statistical skills are very important, as we said. Evolution of low-cost devices like smarter computing machines are providing more flexibility to the algorithms that we are building. Okay, as mathematicians and statisticians, we know when we have to solve a high-end analytical problems, simple calculations, pen and paper, or simple machines, Excel sheets do not provide that. Okay, we need good tools, we need good computing machines which provide more flexibility, more effectiveness, and more efficiency in solving the problem within seconds, so that the data which is being created every microsecond gets processed very faster and quicker. So knowing mathematical and statistical knowledge and the use of tools where we can process the data faster helps a lot. Computer science, so people from the IT industry who have a lot of knowledge of technology can also be a part of this field because they are equipped, they have a good knowledge of technology. Smarter implementations. Now, once you build a model, once you have the analysis with you, you need to execute it, right? You need to implement it at the front end so that you, whatever analysis you have done, you can apply it. Now, let me give you an example over here. If we go to a bank for a loan, the bank sometimes rejects the loan, sometimes accepts the proposal and gives us the loan. Now, what are the different parameters where the bank decides that the loan has to be approved or to be disapproved to a particular customer? So, if a customer is having a good credit rating, that means he is credit worthy. If he is a salaried person with some X years of experience of it or some Y amount of salary, if he has, also the bank will see how many people are dependent on that customer, if he has a very huge family or if he has any other liabilities going on currently, what is his age, can he repay the loan in this many years or months or whatever. So there are many such factors that are being taken care of. If he is an existing customer of the bank, if he is using a credit card, how does he repay his credit card bills? Does he do a delay or he does a timely payment? All these factors help the bank to know if the customer is a credit worthy customer or no. Now, depending on all these parameters, as an analytics professional in a banking domain, I will create a model and I will decide the few important parameters which are explaining me or which are helping me to decide if the bank is low, if the bank should give a loan to this customer or no. Now, when I'm doing all of this analysis, it is not going to be difficult. Now, I am the analytics professional. I sit in the back end and work and do a lot of crunching and munching on the data. But a person in the front end, the person who sits in the bank where the customers come, fill in the form and submit it to the officer, he is not an analytics professional. He would just require, he fills in the information of the customer and you just pop up the message, the loan should be approved or loan should not be disapproved, or should be disapproved, sorry. If it has been approved, then how much percentage of loan can you give to this particular customer? If the customer is an okay type of a customer, then you might not want to really risk, but you might only want to give him 80% of what he is asking for. If the customer is really good, then we can give him the loan because we know that he's going to repay it. But if the customer is not credit worthy, then we might want to disapprove the loan to that customer. So this final decisions which are being taken, the model is built in the back end, but the final decision or implementation which is required in the front end requires smart implementation of the new tools and technology. This is where computer science plays a very important role in analytics or being a part of or called or being called as a data scientist. So this all things has to be taken care of. So here we have some points which say a day as a data scientist. That means It is here we are trying to explain what as a data scientist is required to, what tasks of a data scientist are important to perform his regular activities of model building, implementation, etc. Okay, before we go here, any doubts still here? Anything not understood? Or if I'm fast or slow, please let me know, okay? Now, since there are no questions as of now, there are only two things. Either everyone is understanding or you're not understanding. So I would just like to know whichever of the two is right. Also, one more thing, if I am using some of the words which are not very familiar to you, do not worry, because as we are entering into this course for a view of changing your career or learning something new, there are going to be some things which are going to be uh, little different from whatever we hear regularly. So as we go with the course, these things will come naturally to you because you will be understanding them slowly. So do not worry if there are some things which you do not understand. But yes, you can definitely ask those things to me again and again. I won't mind explaining them to you. Okay. So Dinesh is asking how data scientist is different from data analyst. Okay. So, Dinesh, data analyst is a person who is only working with munging on data. Okay, taking business decisions or implementing that thing is not a part of his role. His part of the role is just to get the data, extract the data, work on the data, give good, create good algorithms, and come up with good outcomes. But finally, taking a business decision and implementing that on the front end or wherever required is not going to be part of data analyst's job. A data scientist can be a part of all of this process. Right from extraction of data to implementation of a particular thing. So complete a whole to whole project implementation is where data analyst will definitely be a part of. Make sense? Okay. So a day as a data scientist. Mm, okay, Dinesh is asking one more question. In real-time scenario, from where the data analyst will get the data? Okay. So basically, a data analyst will definitely work with some company. He will be a data analyst with some company. Every company nowadays, now every small and big companies nowadays focus on capturing the data a lot because everyone has understood the importance of capturing and storing data and analyzing it. Even the smaller startups, even the smaller companies, smaller outlets, they would like to take the feedback from the customer and they would like to preserve that data. So you can there are data management teams which help in extracting the data from various sources. So bank, the example of a bank, the bank gets its data from credit card customers. It gets its data from the customers who just have RD, just have savings account, RD, FD with the bank. Some are just part of bank for securities purpose. That means just stockbroking and everything. Some people take loans. So there are various sources of data that a bank can get, and you can implement, collect the data together, whichever you require, and then you can use your algorithm or statistical knowledge on it to extract some information. So there has to be a different, there are different teams also altogether in different companies who focus only on data extraction and creating a very, what do you say, structured format of a data and storing them. Deep is asking a question. Suppose if you want to predict the value of stock in future markets, do I have to get all the data of the past right from beginning? Okay. See, how much ever data you have, better interpretation of results you get. But it's okay if you do not get the data from the beginning. You can have at least 2-3 years of data. Max 5 years of data is what you require to get good results. Now, if you are trying to predict values of stock in future market, there's a technique called time series which you would require to apply, which is also a part of the course. We'll be studying what time series is. Okay. So, Dinesh, is your question being answered? Okay. Also, to start off with, when we are going to work on the data, there are websites where you can uh, extract data from. Okay, so there is a website called Kaggle. If I'm not sure if every one of you have, if every one of you know it, Kaggle is a place like GitHub only. Kaggle has a lot of real-time data sets. Okay, so here you can take part into competitions and you can download the data and work on that data. These are real-time data, and then you can compare your results with the other contestants also. So this is a good way to be or keep practicing yourselves as a analytics professional. Secondly, when the part of text mining will come, you will be able to, or you will be understanding how to handle unstructured data. At that time, you will also be able to maybe know how to extract data from Twitter and analyze it. So R has a R. You can authenticate Twitter connection over R. You can extract data for whichever hashtag you want to do the analysis for, and then you can interpret the results out of it. So there's a lot of interesting things that are going to be coming up the way. So a day as a data scientist. A data scientist is going to try and understand the business problem. He's going to check the availability of a data which is related to the business problem and additional data they might need to build a solution. So first, the understanding the data requirement. So when you know what is the business problem, understanding the data requirement is important. If a particular data which you require is not available, then you might want to have a different source of data which can replace that information, and then you can build a solution on that data. You need to formulate the hypothesis. That means hypothesis means something that you want to claim and you are trying to prove if it's right or wrong. Data scientists will also run various experiments, various mathematical and statistical techniques for the data so that he can recognize and discover the pattern in the data that you have. Finally, a data scientist, whatever solutions he gets, he needs to build a relevant business story so that he can narrate the same to his stakeholders so that they are able to take proper business decisions and whatever recommendations a data scientist is giving. So a data scientist whole to whole should to state the problem, to understand what data are required, work on the data. Now working on this data is a very, very big process. And then finally, whatever interpretations we have, we are going to, why we call it story building, because when we want to narrate our high-end analytical complex solutions to someone who are from non-technical background, you need to explain them in a layman term so that building a story so that they understand the crux of what you want to say. So these all things are important for a data scientist to be well equipped with. So to summarize, skill sets of data scientists: mathematics and statistics. You should be good with linear algebra, multivariate calculus, probability. In statistics, you should be good with parametric tests, non-parametric tests, Bayesian methods, statistical distributions, etc. Now, I don't know how many of you are from mathematics background and you are aware of these things, but if you are not, please do not worry, because whenever we are going to go ahead with the course, we are going to start with basics of these stuff and then work on the algorithm. Okay. So the data science pipeline says we need to ask question, we need to do some domain research, we need to frame hypothesis, we need to train a model and communicate the results. So this is just summarizing, this image just summarizes whatever we said as whatever we covered in a day of a data scientist. And here we talk about a little bit of machine learning. Now, machine learning is where you have knowledge of algorithm along with the best technology that you can implement to execute it more and more effectively and efficiently. So, if you all can just read this statement, whatever is displayed, okay? Just try to read this. Is this pop-up which is coming up in middle? So you can you all see the screen properly, or this thing is hampering in between? Okay, okay. What I'll do is I will stop sharing and immediately share the screen again so that this pop-up just goes away. I don't know why it has come up. Okay. I've shared it again. Now there is no pop-up. I want you to read the statement which is defining machine learning. So Mr. Tom Michel has given this definition of machine learning. I want you all to read and try to interpret whatever you have understood from this. So we have 5 minutes to do this. Anyone wants to attempt the explanation? Okay, nobody? Should I go ahead with it? Yes, Shrishti, you can try definitely.
So a computer program learns from the experience, from the tasks it's been given and its performance in the task,
Hmm.
and its performance at the tasks it improves with the experience is what
Okay.
I could recover.
Yeah. Okay. So a good attempt. So you all must have heard about machine learning. Machine learning, why do we call it machine learning? Yes, Raman, right. So Raman gives us a definition. In machine learning, computer will learn automatically while doing the task and it will improve by time. So here we know how humans learn. How does a human learn? How does a small baby learn to walk? A small baby doesn't know to walk unless he sees his parents and siblings and people around him walking on two legs, whereas the baby is just crawling and sitting. It will try to get up on its two legs and he thinks that it can walk. But when he tries to walk, he feels there's some unbalance and he falls down. Now, the baby takes several efforts to stand up, balance itself, and start walking again. Now, this procedure is where the baby is looking at the environment. He is, so the environment, that means the class of task, he wants to walk. The performance measure here is that it should be able to walk on the two legs and improves with experience. That means after it's imbalanced, it falls down, it again gets up, it again tries to walk unless it can run properly. So here a baby is trying to learn and trying to be perfect in walking and running on two legs, looking at the environment, whatever is happening nearby. So this is what machine learning is. Yes. So Deep also defines that the computer is given the data and the model, and the computer learns from this information. But there's one more thing I would like to add over here, Deep. We give the algorithm the data, but it does not stop there. With the new data, it also creates changes in the algorithm by itself. Human intervention is almost zero in machine learning tasks. So that's why this definition, even though it feels a little complicated at reading once or twice, after you read it several times, it comes to you, or it becomes easier to understand that if a computer is said to learn from some experience E to perform some task, and we give a performance measure. Okay, so how the task has been done, we give a performance measure to completion of that task. Now, if that performance of task is T as measured by P, it improves with experience E. So as it looks at more and more data, it is becoming more and more better in its performance by changing the algorithm as per required or as per the data we get. So machine learning is computer where it learns, or machines learns by themselves without explicitly being programmed by humans. Okay, so I hope this definition is making some sense to you all now, and it is easy to understand. So looking at the pipeline, this pipeline is also almost similar to what we've seen earlier. We need to identify the variables. We need to pre-process the data. That means we need to have a proper data in place. Okay, so just a minute. Ranjit is asking me if any real life example to correlate machine learning. Okay, so basically, Ranjit, I'm sure we all must have played video games when we were young. So, what those video games? How are these video games built? These video games are built on platforms of machine learning and artificial intelligence. Now, these video games are some age-old things, or some things which are like a lot of years back. But let me tell you one thing: machine learning and AI has also been in with us since a very long years. It is just recently that a lot of people have started recognizing these things. So, if we are building a machine learning game, or if we are building a video game, where the Super Mario, the game that we used to play, it has to jump all the obstacles and run. Now, if you're starting to build a game where you want the machine to play by itself, what will you do? You will it will run from the set of algorithms. It will first hit the obstacle and fall down. The game is over. In the next, it will try to jump that obstacle and go ahead. But again, a future obstacle comes and it tries. So it's learning from the obstacles that are coming in between, and we are trying to overcome those obstacles, and we are trying to clear the level. This is where, now here what I'm saying, I'm not saying that we are sitting with a video game and we are making the Mario do the jump. There are computers. Now, chess. We play chess with computer. How does a computer know to play chess? These algorithms, and how much of a number of times we play chess with the computer, it tries and it becomes more and more finer. There are many instances where computer wins and we lose in front of the computer. So this is how, where we see a lot of machine learning you can see in gaming also. Now let me give you one more real example. Let's say example of a YouTube. We all watch videos, we all watch songs, trailers, movies on YouTube. Now, when you log out of YouTube, it gives you different recommendations. But when you log in again to YouTube with your own credentials, it gives you different set of recommendations. If you've not observed, and if all of you've not observed this thing, try it once. Without logging in, the recommendations are different, and after logging in, the recommendations are different. Without logging in, the recommendations are in general, depending on your location or whatever. After you log in, your recommendations become specific. Now, suppose for a few months or for a few days, you're just watching web series. You're not watching anything else. It will give you recommendations for web series only. Is anyone not on mute? If you are watching a mix of songs and videos and web series and some action films, then you will get a recommendation of a mixed set of things. So here, not so there are millions of people who use YouTube, but there are not million of people who are sitting at the back end and looking at your watch history. The algorithm understands what you are watching, and accordingly it will give you recommendations. So it is learning from your recent watch histories, and it is understanding from whatever you like and whatever you store and watch later. and accordingly it will give you recommendations to watch next. So this is a heavily used application of machine learning. Your machine learning works very immensely. I hope it's clear to you now. Okay. So the machine learning pipeline tells us that we pre-process the data. That means we try to get the data in a clean format. Then we select a particular algorithm that will help get us the best accurate results. We validate our results and then we implement them. So this is a continuous cycle which goes on happening for very high and complex problems also. Now let us define algorithm. Uh, I'm sure this is something very easy to understand. What is an algorithm, everyone? Okay, so Deep is asking me, what does validation mean? Validation means, validation, you must have heard, we are trying to validate the results. That means we are trying to check the consistency of we have got with a different set of data altogether. So usually what do we do in performing a model or building a model? What do we do is we create different sets of data. We create a trained data and we create a test data. A trained data is where you build the model. That means you apply an algorithm, you get the results. And test data is where you just implement that model and check the results. So you're just trying to validate your results. You're just trying to check the consistency of your results on a new data altogether. So that is what validation means. Yes, algorithm is a kind of representation of data flow. It is a formula for solving a problem. Uh, and how do we solve the problem? Step by step by taking sequence of specified actions. So algorithm is where we represent an algorithm. We try to evaluate it by looking at the performance measure, whatever it is. And then we try to optimize the algorithm and then we again represent again. So it is again a cycle where we have uh, a formula with a step-by-step process to perform some actions. Now here, when we are talking about this representation, evaluation, optimization, here we have different stages which come under it. Representation means by representing the algorithm by a tree, by a graphical model or a neural network, and evaluating it with different measures and then optimizing it. Now, these all words would be a little new to you all, but decision tree. This is one of the very famous analytical techniques that is used in the industry. We try to represent our output through decision tree or through neural networks. Neural networks, much of it looks like the neural network that we have in human body. That means the neurons are connected to each other, which pass on the information. So much like a spider web. Evaluation. Now, whatever representation of the algorithm that we have, how do we evaluate if it is performing better or not performing better? There are different ways of evaluating or finding out the performance measure. Now, these are a few of the things: finding out the accuracy, finding out the precision, finding out the entropy of a particular thing. We are going to do all of these things: entropy, probability, precision, recall, accuracy. We are going to study all of these things in detail when we actually come to that part. And then looking at this evaluation, we try to optimize our algorithm by having some more better algorithms like greedy search or gradient descent. These are called as boosting algorithms. Boosting means the algorithms which try to boost the performance of your current algorithm. So these are the components of learning, and we are going to look at them slowly one by one. So here, let us summarize what is data science, how do you define it, what are the applications, and why do you require data science? So why do we require data science? Yes, I have one question. Yes, Deep. Here we are going to be trained. So I'll just explain you very briefly how we are going to progress with the course. See, these things, it's just to give you a brief idea of what we are going to cover or what things are actually going on right now around us. But what are we going to study in more details is what is a data, what are the different aspects of the data, how to handle data sets, missing values, outliers, how to summarize the data, how to get the descriptive statistics of the data, how to get some insights from that, and then use predictive modeling. Now, under predictive modeling, there are various algorithms that we are going to learn, like linear regression, logistic regression, decision trees, time series, etc., clustering, and all. So these are algorithms we are going to learn based on the data. So by the end of it, we will be able to confidently say, okay, this is the data, I'll be able to apply this algorithm to get this result. So we are going to do all that. And yes, after applying the algorithm, how to interpret the results and how to optimize the algorithm is also what we are going to see. So we are going to cover all of these stuff. So we have a long way to go. Our course ends in May. By that time, I'm sure everyone will be very uh, you all will be very confident about using these terms, and you'll be very proficient with using the algorithms that we are going to study. So data science is basically we require it so that we have smarter computers so that we can process complex algorithms. We have less dependency on the data analyst to fine tune the ML model. That means ML is what we say that it requires minimal human intervention. So if we have good algorithms in place and good computers in place, then we can have minimal uh, dependency on human to get more and more final results. We can leverage a cluster of models than a single model. So this method is called ensemble. Ensemble means a group of things. Okay. If we just look at the English literally meaning of ensemble, it means a group of things. So it might work that your model is your data is a very complex data, and not only one algorithm works on it, but you will have to create a group of algorithms which you would uh, want to club together so that you get much better results. And auto selection of ML models is required based on the validation results. So all these things give us why data science is important so that we can process. Now, why am I saying that we less human intervention and more of machines? Because as I keep on telling you, a lot of data is getting created every microsecond. This data is flowing at such a high speed that if we do not capture the information of the data at that moment, it will become irrelevant after a point of time. So that's why we require more and more machine learning, and we require high computing technologies so that we can capture the data at that very moment. We can interpret its results, and we can implement it so that we have better performance in any domain or any problem solution that we want. If there's a human intervention, there are a lot of constraints that come. Maybe we'll not be able to capture the fast moving data at that very time. And if it just goes on, if it is been there with us for a few days or a few weeks, maybe it becomes irrelevant. So uh, these high computing algorithms are very much required. So how to become a data scientist? Uh, the course is going to help us do that. We will be requiring basic prerequisites of statistics and mathematics, good programming skills. So we are under programming skills, it's mentioned that we need to be good in R programming and Python. Where in our course we are definitely doing R, we'll be good in R definitely. We need distributed computing and databases. Now, this is something which being as an individual is not possible. It is completing in a proper setup company, data munging and filter and mining the data. So all these things are important to become a data scientist. And with this, we are coming to an end to our first session where we introduced ourselves with what business analytics is, what is machine learning, and what is a data scientist and what you require to become one. I have one question. Okay. So Dinesh is asking if R and Python play the same role or they are different. R and Python are different programming languages. If you know R, you can pick up Python easily. It's not difficult. But yes, they are open source tools which help a data scientist. I also would like to add one comment over here that R and Python both complement each other. There are a few things which R cannot perform, which Python can perform better, and there are a few things which Python cannot perform better, R can perform better. Now, Python is more famous for the people who are into product development. Uh, People who more want to develop products, depending on some analytical skills, Python, because it's Java based, it's more popular with those people. And R is more popular with statisticians, where you are just doing a lot of data munging. So, if you all get a chance, I would recommend that you learn Python also. R is definitely a part of course, and we'll be learning R from today itself. So now the next session, now the next topic for us is going to be introduction to R. But definitely, as you get time, you can start learning Python also. What's data munging? Data munging is nothing but crunching the data and trying to get a lot of so you're just trying to crush the data, squeeze it, and get a lot of information from it. It's just another word for squeezing the data. So, any other questions? There are a few people, or I'm not hearing anything from them. So, any particular reason for not hearing from you all? If there's something which is not understood, you can please, I'm keeping on repeating, please let me know. Um, get yourselves comfortable and ask questions, whatever it is. I am not here to judge if it's a right question or a wrong question or any silly question or any small query. It's okay because you've paid for the course, and I would always expect and I would all recommend to try and get more and more from the course. So keep asking questions. Okay. So just let's take a 2-minute break before we go to the next topic of understanding what R is. I'm going on mute, but I am available. You can put your questions in the chat box meanwhile, if any. Okay, everyone, let's be back. So, comfortable? Should we start with the next topic about R? Great. Okay, I'm sharing my screen.
Unnati, Sandeep here.
Yes, Sandeep.
While installing this R, I'm getting a option to select MDI or SDI.
About?
About the display mode, do you prefer the MDI or SDI interface?
Are you doing it on Mac?
No, it's Windows.
With Windows? Okay. I doubt it shows such thing. And has it given some thing below?
Nothing, please specify MDI or SDI, then click next. MDI, one big window, SDI, separate window.
But one big window is, I think, required.
Okay.
Vasu, these assignments are for you all to be doing it and for practice. We are not going to spend much time on things, but yes, whenever you solve these assignments, if you're stuck with, you have any doubts, you're stuck with it, we can discuss those particular problems in the class.
And it is asking us to select HTML or plain text.
Okay. From where are you installing this? It's, from the same path that I told you, right?
Yes.
Because it doesn't usually give these options. Try plain text.
Okay. I selected accept defaults.
Okay.
Sorry. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So guys, we have been discussing some part of the R from yesterday. We know that R is a open source tool where we are going to able to work on the data, extraction of data, reading different file formats, working on the data, creating different algorithms, and having the visualization output to it, etc. Now, we are installing data from a CRAN mirror. Okay, whenever you go to installation of R, it always gives you this website www.cran-r. Now, what is CRAN? CRAN is a comprehensive R archive network repository. Okay, so CRAN repository is where now, as I told you, since it's an open source tool, it has a community which contributes for better performance of the R. Many people um, try to have or build better algorithms so that they can make the performance better or any algorithm perform better in R. So there are a few packages which are required for a particular tasks to be done. Now, when this improvement activity is always happening, the old packages are sent in the archives and the new packages are kept. So that's why this CRAN directory, knowing it is very important, comprehensive R archive network, where we get some packages which are not there in the current list. So it is going to help us. Okay, I'll just write down what CRAN is. CRAN, the full form of CRAN is Comprehensive R Archive network. No, they are not different tools. CRAN is just a network of file transfer protocol and web servers so that they can keep R up to date and create different versions, and there's a different documentation of R available. Okay, so if you just read it over here, CRAN is just a network from where we are using R. Okay, now CRAN, you do not have to worry about CRAN mirror nearest to you to minimize network load, because the R Studio that we are going to use, we do not need to select the CRAN network over there. It automatically will select the nearest network according to your location. So that is something that we do not need to worry now. Uh, yes. Manisha, you have some more questions on it? Okay, welcome. So, how do we install R on laptop or desktop? Now, instead of just showing you this screenshot, I'll just take you all through again the. Just give me a minute. I'll take it on the net so that I can just show you the procedure. Okay. So if you type CRAN R, or you just type R download or R download for Mac, you will get different things. Okay. So here we have it for Windows. For comprehensive R, here we can download R also. So when I click on CRAN R project, I have download R for Linux, I have download R for Mac, and I have download R for Windows. You can select whichever suits you. Okay, so now mine is Windows. So if I click on Windows, it is going to download an exe file on my machine, and I just have to install that exe file by running it. Okay, so it's happening currently. So here we have install R for the first time. So you can click on that, and then you are redirected to download R 3.4.3 for Windows. Now it is available for 32-bit also and for 62-bit also. So you just click on this and an exe file will get downloaded for you. Yeah. So you can see in the top bottom corner, left hand side, the exe file is getting downloaded for me. It's a 78 MB file. So it will take some time to download. And once it gets downloaded, you can just click on it and you can run the software for it to run, for it to get installed on your machine. Next, after this R gets downloaded, what you are supposed to do is to download R Studio. So R Studio open source enterprise ready professional software for R. There is no difference in functioning of R and R Studio. It's just that the interface is much better in R Studio. It helps us do simultaneous things at the same time. So you can download R Studio. There is a tab of download over here. You click on download. It will ask you if you have to download it for Windows 7 or for Mac or Ubuntu, etc. It's just taking some time. Yeah. So once you click on it, you have our desktop, okay, open source license, which is free. You need to download that. So click on that download. And now it will give you different options. So you want R for Windows Vista 7, 8 or 10. You want it for Mac. You want it for Ubuntu, etc. So you need to select it according to whatever you require. You click on that. Again, an exe file will get downloaded on your machine, which you need to install by clicking run on it. Okay, so as I mentioned, R and R Studio are different look-wise. Okay, let me open both of the softwares for you so that you can know what is the difference between the two. But the functioning is the same. R Studio has a better interface to do things at multiple things, and R is called the R console. Now, for working Hello? Can you all hear me? I suddenly just went off the meeting because my laptop randomly stopped working. I'm sorry for that. Okay. Uh, let's start without wasting any time. Mm, uh, so downloading R and R Studio is clear to everyone. Okay, great. I will open both for you to just see how the both look like. Just give me a minute. Yeah, I'm sharing the screen. Just give me a minute. Okay, so I hope you can see my screen. So this is a normal R console which you are first downloading. Okay, so first when you download R console, you will open up it and you will be able to see a window like this. So you just need to type the codes here. You just need to type the syntaxes here and codes will run. Now the next which we are going to work on is R Studio. I'll show you what R Studio looks like. Yeah. So you can see how R Studio looks like. So there are four different uh, sections in this R Studio. The first section, the first section is script writing, where we are going to write down our scripts. Okay. The next section is console. This part, okay, the left hand bottom part is what you see in our console when you download it first. So this is console part, where after you enter the code, it will get reflected over here. So if I write down the code, x equal to c of a comma 2 comma 3 comma c, if I just write it down like this, if I enter it, I will see error or whatever message is coming, that's okay. But I am entering a script over here and then I am entering it, the script gets repeated in console along with the output. Okay. Now whatever I wrote, there is an error in it, and so it's showing me an error. Now let me write down it in this way. See, so when I wrote down this script, I got the value again in blue in console. And when I created this thing, if you see the left hand side top, right hand side top environment, you will see that values got created. So I created a value which is having numbers. So I created a vector called x, which is having number 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So it is created a value x, which is numeric. It has 4 digits in it, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so this is how it will get reflected. So whatever data, whatever vectors or numbers you are working on, they will be reflected here in the global environment. Besides environment, you have a tab of history. If you click on history, you will see whatever codes you have been working on for quite some time. Okay, so you will be able to see all those codes in this history. Next, in the below pane, below the environment and history, you will see multiple tabs. So the first tab is files, where you can connect to any file on your local machine from this place. The next tab is plots. So if you're creating some plots, you will be able to see those plots over here. Neelam, you do not have to press enter. There is a different way of entering the script in R. You can see over here a run sign, a sign over here, run. So when you write the code, you keep the cursor on that code and you just click on run. It will get reflected. So Manisha, valid question. The history gets cleared after a particular time? No. The history will remain if we are going to save the history. So before we close the R, when we close the R, it always gives us a pop-up. Do you want to save the workspace? So you have to click on yes. When you save the workspace, all the history remains. This is the R script that we are going to write. Okay. Now this is just for example that I showed you. Okay, I was explaining about the plots. So whatever plots, scatter plot, bar chart, histograms, ggplot, whatever we are going to plot, they are going to appear over here. Now the next is packages. Okay, so as I told you, it's an open source tool and people keep on updating by getting new packages in the system or updating the current packages. So you all can see those packages over here. Okay, there's a list of packages. Now I have been using R for quite some time, so I have a very big list of packages, but you as a starter, you all as a starter would have only a few packages which are already installed in R. Those are the base packages which you require for normal functioning. But as we go ahead, I will tell you which all packages you need to install. Okay. The next, I'll talk more about packages in the later section. We have something called help. In help, you can type any command and you can find out what it means. Okay, so if you type the command mean, mean, mean means average. Okay, so it will give you details about what that command actually means. So it's a generic function for the trim arithmetic mean. It will give you how to use it and what are the arguments that you need to give in that particular function. What are the values that it should take and what are the examples. So R also gives you the example. So this help is a very good thing to use when you are a learner in R because you get to know what are the functions about, what are the arguments that you need to enter in the function, what values the arguments take, and with the example. Okay. So this is a help function which you will be needing. And in the viewer, you can just view anything. Actually, it's not more of used, but when we are going to use it, I'll show you what it is going to do. But as of now, nothing you can view over here. We've not done anything to view anything in these files. Okay, so coming back to our presentation. So this is, as I explained you, this is how the RStudio looks like. Here, what they have done is script and console, they've taken it side by side. Now these windows, these four panes, they can be interchanged. You can shift it from one place to another. Okay. So these four windows, you can even minimize and maximize a window if you do not want. So suppose I do not want to look at environment and history. I am just going to minimize it over here. Wait, I'll just show you again. Just a minute. In the RStudio, if you do not want to look at the environment and history, you just want to look at the plots and packages, then you can just minimize this window and you will get only a 3 window pane distribution of the RStudio. Okay. Otherwise, this is how normally it looks like. So it depends on you how you want to do these things. When we use it more often, you will become more familiar by using R in different windows of R. So let me go back to the presentation. Yeah. So this is RStudio. How do we create a new file? When we start doing it, I'll be explaining it to you all. New file, under new file, we have new project, new R script, R notebook, etc. All these things we can use, but we are mostly going to start off with using R script only. You can import the data also from here, import data set. You can save anything, whatever you do by save option or save as option. So here you will be able to save the codes that you are typing. So these are the 4 panes that we saw in R. Data view or the R script editor where we write down the script. Environment and history, file, PPTs, packages and help, and console where we get the R script along with the output of it. Okay, that appears in console. So this is about our history. All the history can get recorded over here if you save it. Now for this R Spark window, now Spark is a tool of under Big Data and Hadoop. It comes under Big Data and Hadoop. So you need that kind of technology just to have that connection. So we're not going to touch it right now. So this is all about Spark. So I'm just skipping it for the moment. The help window, as I told you, it tells me about the functions that we are using along with the arguments that are required in it, and our packages. Okay, so there are different ways of installing and using the packages and updating them time to time. Okay, so let me take you to R again. Yeah. So if you see under packages, you have 2 things, install and update. When you when you want a package to work on something, you will have to click on install. And if you click on update, you will be able to see what all packages you already have installed but are required for updation. Now you can see that there are these few packages. For me, I need to update them. These were the installed versions and these are the available versions of those packages. So if I select on all and I click on install updates, it will go on installing those packages in my system. So I have updated packages in my system then. So installation part will go on as you see in the console. You will be you will see a lot of things happening, all the red marks, because these packages are getting installed. So this installation will keep on happening. How to install and how to use a package, I will show you when we actually do it, because I'll explain you just now and you might not actually remember or recollect it. It's very human because we are not yet started with learning of R. We are going to start it in the next week as per our schedule. So at that time, I'll be telling you so that you all also can work with me so that it will retain much in memory. So I'm going to take you all through all this when we actually work on our codes. Now here in this PPT, which you all also have, there are a few lists of useful packages which we would be requiring during our course. Now, I do not recommend to install the packages at one go. But as and when the packages are required, I will be letting you know that which packages are required to install and update or to run them. So do not worry about that. So these are a few list of packages along with the description of them for what a particular package is being used. So Excel Connect or Excel SX. Now we cannot directly use or import Excel files into R. We need this package to do that. Yes, we can directly import CSV files. We can directly import CSV files. Raman, I will be telling you how to install new packages. Do not worry. So in the next session, when we are actually going to start coding with R, I will be explaining all the steps when you all also will be doing it with me. So when everyone has installed R in this week and we all will be doing it together, it will be much better for you to remember. So I'll be doing it in the next week. So CSV files can be directly read in R, but Excel files cannot. So we need a package to do that. So we have a list of few packages which you can just go through for your knowledge. But when we are actually going to use the packages, I'll share what it is going to be used for and what is the importance of using that particular package. So do not worry about that. Okay. So it's almost 11. It is 11 actually. So we'll have to stop here now. Homework for you all is that I want everyone to have R and RStudio installed on their machines.